The invisible wife. A wedding ring is often treated like a finish line, a symbol that says the searching is over, the uncertainty is gone, the love is locked in place. People see the ring and assume the relationship is protected, sealed, immune to outside influence. But real marriage doesn't work like a lock. It works like a living system. And living systems don't collapse in one day. They collapse slowly, quietly, through neglect that looks harmless in the moment. The most dangerous thing that can happen to a relationship isn't a fight. It isn't even a rough year. The most dangerous thing is when one partner becomes emotionally invisible while still physically present. Because when someone feels invisible, they don't immediately become disloyal. They become lonely. They become numb. They become easy to influence, not because they are weak, but because they are starving in a place where they expected to be fed. Today we're going to explore something that is often discussed with judgment and cruelty, but rarely explored with psychological honesty. Why do some married women become vulnerable to validation outside their marriage? Why do outsiders sometimes describe married women as easy, available, or the simplest target? That language is disrespectful and it hides the real truth. The truth is that vulnerability is often built inside the marriage long before any outsider shows up. This is not a video to justify cheating. Cheating is a choice, and choices have consequences. This is a video about the emotional and psychological pathway that leads to risk, so couples can recognize it early and fix what's breaking before it breaks completely. Because most betrayals don't begin with sex, they begin with a feeling that grows when nobody notices it, a feeling that says, I don't matter here. And when that belief becomes stable, the marriage becomes fragile. Part 1. The illusion of the wedding ring. A lot of people unknowingly treat marriage as an endpoint. Before marriage, there is effort, there is pursuit, there is curiosity, there is noticing, there is that natural hunger to impress, to understand, to win the person again and again. After marriage, the mindset changes. The relationship becomes a responsibility instead of a romance. Not because love is gone, but because life gets loud. Work gets heavy. Bills show up. Children arrive. Families get involved. Health issues, career pressure, social expectations, daily fatigue. And slowly the couple stops living like two individuals in love and starts living like two co-workers running a household. At first, it seems normal. In fact, society praises it. Responsible husband, responsible wife, functional family, good life. But functionality is not intimacy. A home can run perfectly and still feel emotionally empty. This is where the wedding ring becomes an illusion. It creates a false sense of security. It makes people think loyalty is automatic, as if loyalty is a switch that turns on after the wedding. But loyalty is not automatic. Loyalty is maintained by emotional connection, by daily respect, by attention that stays alive. When attention dies, loyalty faces pressure. And the most common form of attention that dies in marriage is not sexual attention. It is personal attention. The type of attention that says, I see you as a person, not just as a role. Many married women slowly stop being treated like individuals and start being treated like functions. She is the one who manages the home, the one who remembers appointments, the one who tracks groceries, the one who handles school messages, medicines, family birthdays, festival planning, guest arrangements, emotional labor, invisible planning. And the more she delivers, the more the family depends on her. But dependence is not appreciation, and responsibility is not romance. So over time, she may feel something painful and confusing. The more I do, the less I am noticed. The more reliable I become, the less I am desired. The more stable I become, the less I am pursued. This is the beginning of invisibility. Invisibility is not always dramatic. In fact, it's usually quiet. It looks like a husband who isn't abusive, isn't cruel, isn't cheating, isn't shouting. He's simply absent emotionally. He comes home, eats, scrolls, sleeps. He speaks only in logistics. He notices problems, not emotions. He reacts, but he doesn't connect. He assumes she is fine because she is functioning. But functioning is not thriving. A woman can cook dinner, pack lunches, attend meetings, manage children, smile in front of relatives, and still be emotionally bleeding inside. When she tries to speak, she may get dismissed. You're overthinking. Why are you so sensitive? You have everything. What's the problem? Stop creating drama. Or he may not dismiss her, but he may not respond deeply either. He may listen like a machine. He may say, and return to his phone. This is when she learns a dangerous lesson. Sharing doesn't change anything. And once a person believes sharing doesn't matter, they stop sharing. Not because they have no feelings, because they are protecting themselves from repeated disappointment. That's why many marriages don't end with loud fights. They end with quiet emotional shutdown. She stops complaining. He thinks the problem is solved, but the problem has only gone underground. And what goes underground doesn't die, it grows. Now understand this carefully. When outsiders target married women, they don't usually target the happy ones. They target the invisible ones, the ones who respond strongly to basic kindness, the ones who light up when someone asks real questions, the ones who feel starved for being noticed. Because the human nervous system cannot ignore attention when it has been deprived. If someone hasn't eaten properly in months, a small piece of food feels huge. If someone hasn't been hugged in years, a gentle touch feels like electricity. If someone hasn't been admired in a long time, a simple compliment can feel like rescue. That is the beginning of the vulnerability. Not because she is immoral, because she is human. Part 2. Identity loss and the emotional vacuum. Marriage often reshapes identity. A woman who once had her own dreams, her own rhythm, her own style, her own freedom, slowly becomes absorbed into roles. Wife, mother, daughter-in-law, house manager, family reputation keeper, peacekeeper. Sometimes she becomes the emotional container for everyone else's stress. Children dump their emotions on her. Parents call her for help. Husband depends on her stability. Relatives judge her behavior. And if she complains, she is told she is ungrateful. So she adapts. She becomes strong. But strength without softness becomes exhaustion. Many women begin to feel like they are disappearing into service. This is what many psychologists refer to as identity erosion or identity diffusion. It means the self becomes unclear. Not because the person is lost, but because the person is overloaded. She may look in the mirror and realize she doesn't recognize the energy in her eyes. She may feel older, not in age, but in spirit. She may feel like she exists only to fulfill needs. And when a person exists only to fulfill needs, they eventually start asking a dangerous question. Who fulfills mine? Now here's the reality most couples don't want to admit. Many women do not primarily want expensive gifts. They want emotional recognition. They want to be known. They want to be valued in a way that feels personal. They want to feel like their husband still sees the woman he married, not just the work she provides. They want appreciation that is specific. Not thanks, said casually, but appreciation that makes her feel understood. Like, I noticed you handled everything today. You've been carrying so much. I'm proud of you, and I'm here. When that kind of recognition disappears, the emotional vacuum forms. An emotional vacuum is not simply sadness. It is a deep emptiness created by unmet emotional needs over time. It is the feeling that love has become a contract, a schedule, a routine, a partnership without warmth. And the brain hates emptiness. The brain always seeks balance. When emotional needs go unmet at home, the brain becomes more sensitive to emotional rewards outside. This is not about character alone. This is about psychology. The reward system in the brain responds to validation like a drug when validation has been missing. A compliment becomes a hit. A message becomes a rush. A notification becomes a pulse of life. This is why emotional affairs can begin even in women who never imagined themselves doing such a thing. Because the pathway doesn't start with desire for betrayal. It starts with desire for identity, to feel attractive again, to feel interesting again, to feel chosen again, to feel like she exists beyond duties. And often the first person who offers this is not even a perfect person. Sometimes it's just someone who knows how to listen, someone who looks at her with attention, someone who asks, "How are you really?" A question her husband hasn't asked sincerely in years. Now think about what that does to the human heart. When your own home doesn't ask you how you are, and a stranger does, the stranger begins to feel like safety. Not because they are safe, but because they are present, and presence is powerful. Even fake presence feels real to someone who has been neglected. This is where people misunderstand the situation. They assume the other man is special. Often he isn't. The effect is special because the emptiness is big. A small light looks like a sunrise when you've been in darkness. This is the emotional mathematics that destroys marriages quietly. Part 3. The routine trap and the dopamine hunger. Routine is necessary. Routine builds homes. Routine builds careers. Routine builds stable families. But routine without romance is the slow death of intimacy. Not because routine is bad, because monotony without connection makes the mind restless. The human brain is designed to respond to novelty. Novelty activates dopamine. And dopamine isn't just pleasure, it's motivation, it's anticipation, it's energy, it's the feeling that life is happening. When a marriage becomes pure repetition, the brain starts feeling understimulated emotionally. Not sexually only, emotionally. Because flirting is not only about sex. Flirting is about being seen, being playful, being wanted, being chased, being surprised, being remembered. Many couples stop doing this, thinking it is childish. But play is not childish. Play is bonding. And when bonding disappears, temptation becomes louder. This is why the routine trap matters. Two people can love each other and still drift apart because they stop creating moments. They stop creating emotional events. They stop building memory. They become roommates with responsibilities. Now add secrecy to this situation. Secrecy is a psychological amplifier. When something is hidden, it becomes intense. When something is forbidden, it becomes exciting. When something carries risk, it triggers adrenaline. And adrenaline makes the body feel alive. So if a woman is living in a marriage where she feels emotionally flat, emotionally unseen, emotionally tired, and then an outside connection appears that brings adrenaline, the contrast becomes addictive. It starts small, a friendly conversation, a shared complaint about work, a moment of empathy, a "you deserve better," a "your husband doesn't know what he has," a "I've never met someone like you." These words look simple, but they are carefully designed to touch wounds, and wounds respond like open doors. Then the boundary erosion begins. They talk more. They share more. She hides small details not because she planned to lie, but because she wants to protect the feeling. Then she starts waiting for messages. Then she starts dressing a little differently, not for the world, but for the possibility of being noticed. Then she starts comparing. My husband doesn't ask. He asks. My husband doesn't listen. He listens. My husband doesn't notice. He notices. And this is where the mind begins to build a fantasy. A fantasy is not truth. It is selective perception. It is seeing only the sweet side and ignoring the cost. An outside relationship has no shared bills, no sick nights with children, no family pressure, no long-term responsibility. It is curated. It is edited. It is the highlight reel. So it feels perfect because the real work of life is not included. And that's why so many people destroy something real for something edited. Now here's the dangerous twist. Sometimes the outside connection becomes more than attention. It becomes a second identity. At home, she is the manager. Outside, she is the desired woman. At home, she is predictable. Outside, she is mysterious. At home, she is taken for granted. Outside, she is celebrated. The outside relationship becomes a mirror that reflects the version of her she misses. And once that mirror exists, it becomes difficult to stop looking at it. Not because she wants to hurt her family, but because she wants to feel like she exists. This is how a responsible, family-centered woman can become emotionally compromised without seeing herself as that kind of person. It's not instant corruption, it's gradual starvation, followed by a sudden meal. Part 4. Emotional affairs and why they feel not that wrong. Many people think cheating starts at the bedroom, but for many women, cheating starts much earlier. It starts when emotional intimacy leaves the marriage and is replaced with emotional sharing elsewhere. That is an emotional affair. It can look innocent from the outside. Just talking, just a friend, just someone who understands. But emotionally, it can become more intimate than the marriage itself. And that's why it's dangerous. Because the emotional bond is what makes physical betrayal more likely. Once a woman feels emotionally connected to another man, the moral boundaries weaken over time. Not because she suddenly has no values, but because she begins to reframe what is happening. She tells herself she is not doing anything physical. She tells herself she deserves someone who listens. She tells herself her husband forced her into loneliness. She tells herself it's only temporary. She tells herself she can control it. But emotional affairs are rarely controlled. They are like fire. You don't control fire by playing with it. You control fire by not lighting it. And the reason emotional affairs feel not that wrong is because they often feel like healing. She feels heard. She feels understood. She feels valued. She feels seen. But healing that requires secrecy is not healing. It is escape. Real healing can survive sunlight. Real healing can survive honesty. If it needs hiding, it is not a solution. It is a symptom. Part 5. Cognitive dissonance in the story the mind creates. Now comes the psychological defense mechanism. When a person's behavior clashes with their self-image, the mind feels pain. A woman who sees herself as loyal, moral, family-oriented will feel intense conflict if she starts crossing boundaries. So the mind starts building a narrative to reduce guilt. This is called cognitive dissonance. And cognitive dissonance doesn't just create excuses. It rewrites memory. It changes how she views the marriage. She begins to focus only on her husband's failures. She magnifies his neglect. She collects evidence that she was always alone. She tells herself he never loved her properly. She tells herself she sacrificed everything and got nothing back. Sometimes that's partially true, but the psychological effect is larger. The mind uses these thoughts like permission slips, because if she can convince herself she is a victim, then her actions feel like justice, not betrayal. This is a very dangerous mental shift, because once betrayal becomes deserved, boundaries collapse quickly. Entitlement becomes the fuel. Not entitlement to destroy, but entitlement to feel alive. Entitlement to receive what she believes she was denied. And once entitlement enters, she becomes easier to approach. Because the outside person doesn't need to seduce her with looks. He needs to seduce her with meaning. He needs to make her feel like she is finally getting what she should have gotten at home. That's the trap. And it works not because married women are weak. It works because the brain is trying to restore balance after long emotional deprivation. Now, another hard truth. Many women who engage in affairs do not want divorce. They want relief. They want to keep the stability of marriage while secretly receiving the emotions they miss. So the affair becomes a supplement, not a replacement. The husband remains the provider, the father, the social structure. The affair becomes the emotional escape. This creates a double life. And double lives create anxiety, because secrets create fear. Fear of being caught, fear of losing reputation, fear of breaking the family, fear of becoming the villain. So she may become irritable at home. She may become colder. She may project anger. She may pick fights. Or she may become strangely detached. And the husband often doesn't realize what's happening. He assumes she is moody. He assumes she is stressed. He assumes it's hormones, exhaustion, women's emotions. And in dismissing it, he pushes her further away. Neglect becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Part 6. The emotional profile of the invisible wife. Let's describe the emotional profile of the woman most at risk. She is not always the loud one. Often she is the responsible one. She is the one people trust, the one who looks stable from the outside, the one who rarely creates scenes, the one who holds the family together. She may even defend her husband publicly. She may look loyal in society, but inside she feels underappreciated. She feels emotionally alone. She feels like nobody asks about her inner world. She feels like her youth disappeared into duty. She feels like she became a service, not a person. And because she is responsible, she doesn't want to break the family. So she suppresses, she sacrifices, she tolerates, until one day she doesn't. And the most dangerous moment is not when she is angry. The most dangerous moment is when she becomes calm, emotionally silent. No complaints, no demands, no fights. Because that silence is not peace, it is resignation. It is when she has mentally separated, even if she is still living in the same house. At that stage, outside attention hits harder, because she is already emotionally single inside. This is why many husbands say, everything was normal. It wasn't normal, it was numb. Part 7. Why some men don't notice until it's late. Many men are not trained to read emotional signals. They read visible problems, money issues, work stress, health problems, house repairs. They fix problems that have clear tasks. But emotional disconnection doesn't announce itself like a leaking pipe. It looks like small changes, less eye contact, less affection, less sharing, more phone time, less laughter, less softness, more irritation, more criticism, more "I'm fine." And men often think, she's just stressed. But stress doesn't remove intimacy by itself. Neglect does. When emotional needs go unmet for too long, the relationship becomes a place of duty, not desire. And desire doesn't survive in duty alone. Part 8. The outsider strategy and why it works. Let's talk about the outsider for a moment, not to demonize, but to understand the dynamic. The outsider often does something very simple. He listens. He mirrors her pain. He validates her story. He says what her nervous system has been waiting to hear. You deserve to be appreciated. You're not like the others. Your husband is lucky. I notice you. You're special. These statements are not magic. They are just targeted emotional supply. And if the woman is emotionally starved, she will respond. This response can be subtle, smiling more, replying faster, sharing more, opening up. Once she opens up, the outsider gains access to her emotional map. He learns what she is missing, and then he becomes that missing piece. Not by being a better man overall, but by being the right stimulus for her wounds. That's why the connection can feel unbelievably strong, because it isn't built on shared life. It's built on shared pain, and shared pain can create intense bonding quickly. But intense bonding is not necessarily healthy bonding. Sometimes it's just two people using each other to escape their own dissatisfaction. Part 9. The price of external validation. External validation feels good at first. It feels like breathing after holding your breath. But it has a cost. First, it creates emotional dependency. You start needing messages to feel good. You start needing attention to feel alive. You start needing the outside person to regulate your mood. Second, it creates distance in the marriage. Because emotional energy is limited. The more you give outside, the less you give inside. Third, it destroys self-respect slowly. Because deep inside, you know you are living a lie. Even if you justify it, the nervous system feels the tension. And that tension turns into anxiety, irritability, guilt, and mental fatigue. Fourth, it risks everything real. Family trust, children's stability, financial security, social reputation, and most importantly, your own inner peace. Many people enter affairs thinking they are entering happiness, but they often enter a prison made of secrecy. The irony is painful. They seek freedom from emotional emptiness, and they end up chained by fear. Part 10. The real root cause. Couples must face. If you want to prevent this situation, you need to understand the root. The root is not temptation outside. Temptation exists everywhere. The root is disconnection inside. Disconnection creates hunger. Hunger makes attention irresistible. So the real question isn't, how do we stop outsiders? The real question is, how do we stop invisibility? Because when a woman feels deeply seen at home, outside attention feels weak. When she feels emotionally nourished, she doesn't crave crumbs. When she feels chosen consistently, she doesn't respond to random approval. Now let's get practical, because psychology without action is entertainment, not transformation. Part 11. What makes a woman feel seen? A woman feels seen when her husband notices the invisible labor, not just the big tasks, the small things, the mental load, the constant remembering, the emotional management. She feels seen when appreciation is specific, not good job, But I noticed you handled this and that, and I know it wasn't easy. She feels seen when he asks questions that are not about logistics. How are you feeling these days? What's been heavy on your mind? What do you miss? What do you want more of? She feels seen when he touches her life gently. A message in the day, a compliment without expectation, a hug that isn't a transaction, a moment of listening without trying to fix. She feels seen when he protects her dignity in front of others, when he doesn't joke at her expense, when he doesn't dismiss her emotions publicly. She feels seen when he remembers who she was before life became a machine. Her music, her interests, her dreams, her personality beyond motherhood. Many marriages fail because the couple stops dating each other. They stop doing the one thing that created the marriage in the first place. Pursuit. And pursuit is not expensive. It is intentional. Part 12. The husband's blind spot and the small daily fixes. If you are a husband listening to this, understand a simple rule. You don't lose your wife when she meets someone else. You lose your wife when she stops feeling emotionally safe with you. And emotional safety is built in small daily moments. Speak to her with warmth, not only with instructions. Look at her when she speaks. Put the phone down for 5 minutes and be fully present. Ask one deep question daily and listen without debate. Compliment her in a way that feels personal. Plan something small sometimes without her asking. Protect intimacy by protecting friendship. Because romance without friendship becomes pressure, and friendship without romance becomes emptiness. You need both. Now, a difficult but necessary point. Many men assume providing money equals providing love. Providing is important, but it's not the same as emotional connection. A woman can respect a provider and still feel lonely with him. Respect doesn't automatically create intimacy, and intimacy is what protects loyalty under stress. Part 13. The wife's responsibility without blame. Now, if you are a woman listening and you feel invisible, your pain is real. But your next step matters. Because outside validation feels like relief, but it often multiplies pain later. The strongest move is not to escape. The strongest move is to confront the truth directly. Communicate clearly, not indirectly. Not hints, not silent anger, not testing. Speak plainly. I feel unseen. I feel lonely. I miss us. I need emotional connection, not just shared responsibilities. Ask for counseling if needed. Ask for structured time together. Set boundaries with outsiders early. Don't tell yourself you can handle a friendship that gives you butterflies when your marriage is starving. Because butterflies are not always love. Sometimes butterflies are warning signals of emotional hunger, needing attention. If communication fails and the marriage is truly dead emotionally, then choose dignity. Choose honesty. Even separation is cleaner than secret betrayal. Because secret betrayal doesn't just hurt the marriage, it damages your own identity. It makes you distrust yourself. Part 14. The hard truth about loyalty. Loyalty is not a personality trait you either have or don't have. Loyalty is a condition created by connection, values, boundaries, and daily behavior. Good people can make bad choices under emotional deprivation. And that's why smart couples don't rely on pride. They rely on prevention. They build systems. They build habits. They build communication. They build romance intentionally like you maintain health. Nobody says, I ate healthy once, so I'm fit forever. You have to keep doing it. Marriage is similar. You don't say, I loved you once, so we're safe forever. You have to keep loving actively. Part 15. The final warning and the final invitation. The most available married woman is often the one who looks the most responsible. Because responsibility hides loneliness. A smiling face hides emptiness. A functioning home hides emotional collapse. And a husband who thinks she would never, may be the husband who stopped noticing her years ago. If you stop pursuing your wife, you don't just risk losing intimacy. You risk creating a silence inside her that someone else will eventually fill. Not because she wanted to destroy the family, because she wanted to feel like she exists. The real warning is simple. Don't let your spouse become a ghost in their own home. Don't let your marriage become a factory of responsibilities with no warmth. Don't let your conversations become only about bills, chores, and problems. Because if the only time you talk is when something goes wrong, love begins to feel like pressure, and pressure kills desire. If you want a powerful marriage, build a culture of attention. Make your spouse feel chosen even after years. Make them feel admired even in routine. Make them feel heard even when you disagree. Make them feel like a person, not a role. Because when a person feels deeply seen at home, the outside world loses its power. And when a person feels invisible at home, the outside world becomes dangerously attractive. This is the psychology of the invisible wife. It is not a story about bad women. It is a story about emotional starvation, identity loss, routine, and the human need to be valued. Learn from it before it becomes your reality, because rebuilding connection is always cheaper than rebuilding trust, and the cost of trust once broken is paid for years.